Hey guys, it's Denise, and this time I want to show you how to make a Santa hat. And a special thanks to Carol from Promise Learning for covering the cost of closed captioning. Alright, let's start with the cast on. Secure your working yarn to the anchor peg with a nice simple knot, and then you're going to wrap every peg. Now you will notice that I have a little rubber band every other peg. It's only because the pattern does call for rib stitch later on, and I will explain. You don't have to do this, only if you want. Alright, now we're going to do one row of a knit stitch, and this is the U-wrap version of the knit stitch. So you're going to half wrap your peg and knit off. Again, half wrap and knit off. And continue to go around the entire loom until you come back to that very first peg, and that is the end of your cast on. The brim is made up of a 4-row pattern, and the first 3 are knit. So you're just going to knit 3 rows of the U-wrap knit stitch. It is the same version of the knit stitch that we used for the cast on. So you're going to basically just half wrap your peg and knit off, and you're going to do this for 3 rows. After a few of them, you can remove the knot off the anchor peg. If you leave it on, it's going to be a big problem, so make sure that you do that. Keep knitting. 3 rows of the knit stitch. Now for row 4, you're going to do 1 knit stitch right here that you wrap, and then the next one is going to be a purl. So put the working yarn under the loop, scoop up the yarn and create a new loop, take the old one off, put the new one on, and pull. Again, you're going to do a knit stitch and then take the yarn and put it under the loop, scoop up, create a new one, take the old one off, put the new one on, and pull. That is a purl stitch. Now I do a knit stitch, and of course the next one is a purl, and now you should be able to see the pattern of why I put a rubber band every other peg. I knit the ones with a rubber band, and I purl the ones that don't, like right here. And then I'm going to continue to do that till I get back to the last 2, and those I will purl because my loom is an uneven number and I have to make a choice, and I chose to do 2 purls. Now I'm back at the front, and I'm going to repeat rows 1 through 4 6 more times. The last 3 rows are knit stitch. When you're done, stretch your stitches and then look for that initial working yarn that you put on your anchor peg, and you're going to flip that one in so that it stays inside the fold. Don't use that first loop to remount because it's a little loose. We're going to use that one last. We're going to get the one next to it and start to remount that first row of loops, and they're going to be really loose, so when you put them, stretch that loop quite a bit, like a lot. Stretch them, because these loops, these first ones, are really easy to put on, but as you start to get to the last ones, if you don't do this, it's going to be really difficult to get those loops to remount onto the peg. Things just get really tight, so make sure to do that. Pull on the loop and remount it on the peg, and you should have the same number of loops as you have pegs. Now you're going to knit off all of your pegs. After you knit that last peg, pull on your working yarn to tighten that loop. Your brim is finished, and now you can cut the working yarn, and we're going to go ahead and start working on the hat. 1 row of U-wrap and 1 row of E-wrap. Sounds a little crazy, but stay with me. Now we're going to connect 2 strands of the red yarn to your 1 strand of white yarn. And that's only because I don't want a really thick brim, so that's why I only used 1. And we're just going to go ahead and make very simple knots with the white strand and the red strand, and we're going to attach both of those red ones to this one single white. It'll be fine, don't worry. And I usually make 2 knots per red strand because I'm like that. You could do just 1 and it'll be okay. And now we're going to be knitting with 2 strands as 1, and we're going to start with 1 row of the U-wrap knit stitch, which by now you guys are professionals doing that U-wrap knit stitch. So just keep going completely around the loom using the U-wrap version of the knit stitch, and then we'll go on to row 2. Once I'm finished with that row of U-wrap, I will start with a row of E-wrap. And for this particular knit stitch, I first have to wrap all of my pegs. So I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to wrap the peg. I push down the loops as I go around, and I put a loop over my existing loop, and I go all the way to the front. Once I have done that last peg that I wrap, it is the first one that I knit off, and now I'm going to go around the whole loom, and I'm going to knit off all of the pegs that have 2 loops, 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. Remember that we are knitting with 2 strands as 1, and when we get back to the last peg, we don't have to knit that one because we already did it. And now we're going to start again with a row of U-wrap, and we're going to repeat 1 row of U-wrap and 1 row of E-wrap until we have a total of 16 rows. Now keep in mind that you are knitting in the round. After you're finished with those 16 rows, then you're going to do a row of U-wrap. And when you're finished with that row, things are going to change. Now you're going to be knitting flat, which means you don't go to the next one. Instead, you turn around for your row of E-wrap. So now we're going in the opposite direction. I know this concept is a little odd for folks at the beginning. So you see that there's an opening. That tells you you did it correctly. You're not connecting the last peg with the first peg. Alright, and as before, you knit off the last one that you did, and now you start going around the loom, and you're going to knit every peg with 2 loops, and now you're going to turn around and start a row of U-wrap. When you're done, turn around and you're going to be doing a row of E-wrap, and then things are going to change when you're done with that row. It's now time to start with the decreases, so knit off that last E-wrap, and now you can see that there's a gap. You're going to take the loop off that last peg and move it over, and take the one off the first peg and move it over. And now there are 2 pegs that don't have loops. You're going to knit off on both sides, and then you're going to start a row of U-wrap. So we're going to continue with the 1 row of U-wrap and 1 row of E-wrap. But the difference now is that when you finish your row of E-wrap, you're going to decrease by 1 peg. Alright, let me repeat this again. Where you finish this U-wrap, you're going to turn around and start your row of E-wrap. When you finish that row of E-wrap, well, first you have to knit off. So wrap all your pegs, knit them off, and when you're done knitting off and you've done that last one, now it's time to decrease. So you move the last peg over by 1. You can knit off now or later, and move that first peg over and knit off. Now you've decreased, and there are 4 pegs that don't have loops, and now you're going to start your row of U-wrap again. And again, so you're doing 1 row of U, you're going to turn around, do a row of E-wrap, and when you've knit off and you're done with that row of E-wrap, then again you're going to then decrease your loops by 1. So again, you take that last one that you knit off and you're going to move it over and knit off, go over to the other side and move that loop over and knit off, and then start another row of U. Continue this until you only have 3 loops left on the loom. Now we're going to bind off those 3 pegs. So go ahead and do your row of U-wrap. So you knit those 3 pegs, and then we're going to go ahead and do the decrease right here. So we move that first peg over and then knit off and move the last peg over, and you're going to knit off, and it won't pull out at this point, so you can pull and see it's not going to go anywhere. So you're going to wrap that last peg and you're going to knit off and get your scissors. Try to give yourself a long enough tail that you will be able to sew your entire hat, and then you can cut the working yarn, get your hook and pull out that long tail, and that will create a knot so your yarn is secure. You can now put your loom away and get your needle. I'm using a metal blunt tip needle, and I'm going to go ahead and thread both of the working yarns, and then I'm going to take the hat and I'm going to turn it inside out and get my 2 sides nice and aligned so that I can go ahead and sew those 2 sides. Now I did use locking stitch markers to get it nice and aligned. You don't have to, but it does make it a lot easier. See? Keeps it exactly where I want. Then take your needle and try to get your working yarn all the way to the tip, and then we're going to sew, and we're going to use the, I believe it's called a whip technique. So you're going to go from side to side and sew those loops. So you get your needle and you go from one side to the next side and sew these two sides of your hat nice and neatly together. Keep going all the way to the end, and once you're done sewing, you can turn your hat inside out, and if you'd like, you can add a button and a pom-pom. Now I did a knitted pom-pom, and if you stay tuned for the video, which will be coming out soon, you can have one too. Alright, be nice, share the video, comment, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe.